Well, embark on a transformative quest for spiritual truth with Path of Faith as we explore the mysteries of faith and the boundless love of God. Our life is always this equation of who we are with who we would like to be. Also, a little bit of who we used to be. It's not possible to conjugate the present moment without the combination of all of this. And the conjugation of the future, that time we're not even sure we'll have, depends on the wise articulation of the past we've had with the present we have today. It's this articulation that enables us to take steps, to walk, always believing that God's hand sustains us, but believing in the right way. Whenever I think of God's providence, I think of it as a favor that never ceases to be present in my life, but at the same time, never removes my possibility of doing my part. Because, my people, we have already learned, even psychology, pedagogy teach us that the good educator never gives his disciple the ready lesson. It would be a crime against the disciple to offer him the ready lesson. The master gives the certainty of his presence to remove any doubt, to be able to help, to dissolve what is hindering and harming learning. But at times, the disciple will have to live with his loneliness. The master remains silent and refuses to give the answer we so eagerly seek. Isn't that how life is? There are answers that only God can give us through his silence. That's also God's hand sustaining us. Because sometimes we have the illusion, and this is the result of naive vision. Unfortunately, religious discourse throughout our lives can give us naive visions that God will do everything for us, that God does this, that God does that. We have the right to believe in divine protection, but we are not relieved of the obligation to do our part, because it's a matter of wisdom, of maturity. The Father does this with the Son, the Mother does this with the Son. Love cannot make us think. The love that we know God has for us cannot make us think that He will do everything. I really like this expression. We only have the right to expect the impossible after we have done everything that was possible for us. So, yes, God protects us, but He also asks me to do my part in this protection. I pray to God for my life. I ask Him to give me health, but I need to do my part for that health to be a reality in my life, right? The care I have for myself is an expression of this part of mine, of the miracle I need to perform daily. So, sometimes I identify God's hand being present in my story, but not holding me as I think He does. Yes, some forsakenness is too important in our human process. It would be very interesting if we learned this from the cradle, but unfortunately not, so it's never too late for us to learn. The unprotected feeling we sometimes feel in life is also God's hand, because those who love sometimes unprotect, so that you are exposed to what you need to live and experience alone. His presence always watching us, always guiding us, because that's very interesting. The more we grow, the more we mature in our experience with God, the greater our capacity to hear and understand His voice in our story. So, God protects me like this, even when He is distant. You know, it's not that He stays distant, it's that we feel that way because of life's situations. The context makes it difficult to perceive that intense presence in our lives. So, that moment of dismay, oh my God, it seems like I'm abandoned by the Lord. No, I'm not. This dismay is part of His protection in our life. Because those who love know very well that love also needs to go through the harsh experience of unprotectedness, because excess love unprotects. Isn't that how it works? When a person is excessively protected, in the end, in contrast to all of this, there is unprotectedness because that person cannot mature. So, they'll be forever naive, forever believing they are in a fairy tale, and life is not a fairy tale. So believing in God's protection doesn't give us the right to think that God will do everything for us, that He will walk for us. No, He will always be strengthening us ahead of these battles we are going to face, but we will be responsible for doing our part. It was like that with Moses. This song quotes Moses, right? It was this hand that helped Moses divide the sea in two. In this passage, there is a great richness that is in Exodus, when Moses is terrified because he took the people out of Egypt and went towards this promised land, promised. You see, it's also a bit protected. The promised land would be reached as a promise that God made to Moses as long as he encouraged himself to take that people out of slavery and cross the difficulties of the desert. You see, anyone who has had the opportunity to go to Israel knows very well what the desert is. You enter that desert to reach a place we don't know where it is, which is only in the heart of a man. As a promise, it's a great difficulty. And the people believed, followed Moses, began to experience the restrictions of the desert, hunger, began to miss the onions, because in Egypt they ate onions. In the time of slavery, onions were the main food. That's why sometimes we use the expression, "Don't keep crying over the onions of Egypt," isn't it? You must have heard that expression when someone advises you to stop lamenting the past. What is lamenting the onions of Egypt? It's saying, "Oh, I was a slave, but I had this food, I had onions to eat, and now I'm free, but I have nothing." Hold on. Give the desert time. Let the desert tell you what it needs to say. Even hunger, restriction, is very important in the human process. We identify all the time that people are spoiled because they lacked nothing. It's terrible when you have a child who has been pampered since childhood, lacked absolutely nothing, and suddenly, in the open field of life, suddenly that person needs to face life's desert, and they don't have enough ammunition to handle it. What do? How do we face the desert? At that moment, when Moses took the people out of slavery and encouraged himself to lead this people through the desert towards the promised land, he also felt fear. He also didn't know what it would be like. That's why, throughout the manifestations of God in that moment of Moses' life, he communicates with God. They are epiphanies, which are these glorious manifestations of God there through simple reality. It's the burning bush, it's the stone that gushes water. Anyway, God talks to Moses, gives him signs that he is on the right path, but doesn't shield him from the unprotectedness that the desert causes him. So unprotected in that desert, materially speaking, he can establish a trust in God that no other comfort had given. You see how interesting it is? How the unprotectedness, the apparent unprotectedness, has a whole reserved care. And behind the scenes there, just like you, who are a father, a mother, create a restriction for your child so that they can mature, isn't it? Sometimes you take something away from your child so that they really feel the lack, so that later they can appreciate it. I repeat, many people go wrong in life because they lacked nothing. Then you notice that when there is too much lack, it can also cause an imbalance, a lack of trust in life, in people. Anyway, it's balance that works. When you start educating by providing protection and apparent unprotectedness, where that person will have to face the situation alone, even if you're watching from afar. I faced extremely difficult situations in my life, where it wasn't enough for the other to say, "I'm here." Why? Because they were mine. Even help. Looking to the side, knowing that you have a friend with you, that there is a mother, a father, a brother. But in many moments of our lives, this ordeal is to be lived in solitude. It's when I need to experience this feeling of being unprotected. Just like Moses experienced stepping on the discomforts of the desert. By facing those discomforts, he understood what the human condition is. So I also make this experience. You do. I don't want to spend my life in blissful clouds. I really don't. And that's why, since I was very young, when life was difficult for me, I found something in that discomfort that made me think higher, that made me think beyond. Moses, experiencing the discomfort of the desert, needed to convince those who were with him that that discomfort would be worth it. Oh, but some wanted to go back to slavery. Look how human weakness is very present in our lives at times of discomfort. How many people, let me give you a simple example so you understand. There are people who need to break up with relationships that are terrible, disastrous. That person only brings harm to you, you know that. But you have a bond with them, you have an emotional need, you can't break up with that relationship. So, suddenly you encourage yourself, everything becomes clear to you. This person doesn't do me good. I can't marry this person, because if in the time of dating, it's already like this, imagine in my marriage, later in my married life, it will become an even worse hell than it already is. Then you encourage yourself. You're motivated by people around you to break up. Then it's terrible on the day you break up. The suffering is cruel inside you. It seems like you'll never recover, that you only think about that person. Why? Because despite them causing you so much harm, you have a sick little bond with them of emotional dependency. You know they harm you, but you don't know how to live without them. Then you start taking steps. The first week is horrible. You suffer, you cry, you can't listen to the music, you can't smell, you can't see that little thing that they forgot there at your house. All of that is terrible. But suddenly you start taking steps towards liberation. It's as if you were walking towards a place that will only do you good. And a month later, that suffering gets better. 2 months later, that suffering gets better. And suddenly you're not even remembering anymore. Of course, there's still a silent bond there, being dismantled, because emotional dependency, it doesn't die overnight. It's like suffocating a cancer cell with chemotherapy, where you're removing the life from the cancer cell, which is the cell that kills us. Then let's say 3 months later, you meet that person again, and you have that famous relapse. There you go. The castle you were building, the ground you had walked, which had been so difficult, you throw away, and you go back to Egypt. You go back to slavery. You do the same thing that Moses' companions wanted to do, go back to eating the onions, go back to eating the rotten, spoiled food. Then you restart that relationship. Because it's sick, and you didn't maintain the necessary distance you should have kept. Because when you have that emotional dependency, you have to establish distance. Because otherwise you won't heal. You have to stop wanting to know about that person's life, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop snooping on their Facebook, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop investigating their life. Where were they? What were they doing? You have to cease all points that may make you want to go back to Egypt, because otherwise you'll never be free. Then, 3 months later, you're beautiful and splendid already, killing the cancerous cell. You go give a few more kisses, go back to that horrible dependency, and hell returns to your life. In your first week, it's okay that everything is coming back. Soon, my daughter, you're in a worse hell than you were 3 months ago. That's how it is. When we don't know how to live the discomfort that builds us up, we sabotage ourselves all the time. It's like stopping drinking, stopping smoking. You stop smoking for a year, and you celebrate because you stop putting that carcinogenic toxin in your body, and suddenly you go there and light up a cigarette for no reason, and that addiction comes back as if it were a monster, capable of eating you whole. There you go. All that sacrifice you made in the first days without smoking goes down the drain. Why? All that sacrifice goes down the drain. Why? Because you weren't able to live with the discomfort of renunciation. My people, it's amazing how God's hand assists us like this, making us aware of what we need to break in our lives. These are situations that we need to establish boundaries for, because otherwise, we will never be healed. We will be forever sick in the line of the needy, crying and begging for a little bread of kindness from others, a little bread of affection from others. For God's sake, we were not made for this. We were not made to drag emotionally dependent people around. We were made to love. And love only makes sense in our lives if it builds us up, if it helps us go through the discomfort of the desert. Otherwise, it makes no sense. This pseudo-love, this false love, that sometimes we say we feel for each other, that doesn't help us in the discomfort of the desert. I need to live through my deserts. You need to live through yours. And true friends are those who recognize the deserts the other needs to go through and say, that's right. Let's go through this desert because you need it. Now, Apollonia, she's that happy, orderly life. Remember that character? Apollonia, where everything was a game of being content, right? Stop it. Kill that childish instinct that exists within you that makes you afraid of life's discomforts. Life's discomfort is when the well-lived only makes us better. Take off that victim mask that you stick on your face so others will eternally pity you. You're just wasting time in life like this. What nonsense. God holds our hand for us to be able to cross this desert. It's not to keep falling back and going back to eating the onions of Egypt because we felt sorry for ourselves, because we felt sorry for the other. No. The journey is forward. And there comes a moment when Moses stands before God and says, now you solve this situation because I don't know what else to do. They've already built a golden calf in the middle of the road. They've already caused trouble. They're already worshiping other things. So they're not even remembering that the Lord exists. They only don't go back because they're too far away. But they return in another way. They don't return geographically because they were already far from Egypt. They would die on the way. But they didn't return geographically, but they returned emotionally. Because sometimes we've already surpassed the territory of our physical slavery. I've already left prison, but the prison hasn't left me. That's how it works. I've already taken steps towards my freedom, but I haven't achieved my freedom. I haven't decreed the conquest of my freedom. So I remain emotionally attached to my past. It's a passage from St. Paul to the Corinthians where St. Paul safeguards, drawing attention to the need we have to care for the treasure that is faith. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. This treasure we carry is in jars of clay. When we speak here initially that our faith doesn't always have the maturity to understand this partnership between God and humanity, or even to realize that in this partnership, the primacy is always of divine grace. St. Augustine said that we are not capable of doing good unless good had first been given to us. So you see, what I do because God has already done it in me. God only asks for what he's already given us. Look at how interesting this is. If he asked me to love, it's because he has already given me love before. If he asked me to be good, it's because he has already given me goodness before. It's the corroboration of this word. I cannot be by myself. It is always God who sustains me, who helps me. And that's why I need to identify in the daily life of my life, how can I live this partnership without pretending to be his advisor, to keep telling him, because the advisor's like that. I know because I have an advisor in my daily life, and I know how it works. Sometimes I'm there, ready to receive so-and-so, the advisor comes, his name, blah, 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 so that I can greet so-and-so when he arrives, already with the information. So it's that quick information. I'm in the van, and the girl is already talking. Father, the event is such, talking about such and such who will receive us. It's Bishop so-and-so, I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. The priest will be there, this and that, so that I know who the people are. Sometimes we want to do the same thing with God. We think we're his advisor, that we're going to tell him all the news of the world. It's like that prayer we sometimes see out there, isn't it? Oh, Lord, look at him, how sad he is. Heal him, Jesus. Isn't that right? As if he were not able to know what needs to be done, as if the wisest one in the story were me. You see, Lord, she's very upset with life. Come on, Jesus, fix this in her life. Folks, our prayer cannot have that load of arrogance. You know why? Because it doesn't mature us. Lord, we present the person. We present their reality. We believe in your love. We believe in your goodness. That's it. We become more humble in prayer, And then we'll also allow that prayer to clarify within us what we need to do for the miracle to come true. Because it's very convenient, isn't it? To believe in a Nestor God who is always at your disposal, ready to do everything you ask, the way you ask, and in the order you ask. And woe betide him if he doesn't do it the way you ask, when you ask. No, it can't be like that. Our faith has to give us the confidence that he does what really needs to be done, and that sometimes we don't even know. We're so limited that sometimes we think what God needs to do is move this thing from here to there. And we're convinced of that, when in fact, we might be very mistaken. No, God doesn't have to move this thing from here. He just has to drag it over here. And sometimes it takes us a while to realize that what we were asking for wasn't honest. And then God did everything the way we didn't want it. And we realized that it really was the best way to solve that situation. That's why faith should always give us the maturity of silence, of surrender. The other day, I was talking about this with a friend of mine who was very upset about a situation she was going through. And I noticed this anxiety due to the excess of requests, the excess of pleas, and of course, I respected it. I'm not in her. I'm not feeling the pain she feels. I'm not experiencing the despair she experiences. Oh, but if my opinion is asked, I don't miss the opportunity. Don't you think you should withdraw more, ask less? You've already asked. You know so closely the mercy of God. Why doubt it now? Because if I ask too much for the same thing, it's as if I were showing it to myself, not to him, folks. Prayer. We need to scale. It's what it does to us. If I ask too much for the same thing, I can generate within me a silent disbelief, or then a belief that God only answers when we insist. Insistence is not to change what he thinks. Insistence must be, if it exists. And then we have to change the words. We have to stop asking him. We have to ask for ourselves. It's for our nature to be enlightened by ours, so that we can identify what needs to be transformed in us. Because if I insist too much on asking God to do this, to do that, every day I ask the same thing. Every day I ask the same thing. I'm considering that he is not capable of keeping in his heart what I have already surrendered. I wish that in your struggles, you always have the right and the possibility to withdraw your excesses so that you can have before your eyes your fundamental truth, without exaggeration, just you. And from that, you rediscover the path of life. Thank you for your kindness, for your attention, and may God bless you greatly. May God pour out on your heart, on your home, on your life, the disposition that characterized the heart of Our Lady, so that in her example, we too can be true Christians, always carrying Jesus in our arms to present him to those who do not yet know him. If something is bothering me, the first thing, what can I do to reduce this concern? Is there something concrete I can do? So, you have a pain, a betrayal. Have you already gone to the trader to return his garbage? Do you have something stuck, something you need to resolve within your heart, throw away, through words, a cry, I don't know, some action of yours that can diminish this feeling of discomfort? We need to do it. It's the same with concern. When something worries me and I discover in that concern what I can do to diminish the effect of that concern on my life, and I do it, then I start to solve, I start to open the doors for that past to start to pass. Because otherwise, we'll dam up the experience that wasn't worth it. We'll hold within us the event, the happening that hurt us, that injured us, and then we'll live a continuous process of injuries and wounds. Because the memory, the resentment, the bitterness, they only provoke new wounds within us. I've never seen anyone healed by holding on to resentment. What is resentment? To resent. It's feeling several times. It's as if you took a razor blade and kept passing it over the same spot on your skin. It will never heal, and the cut gets worse. Because you keep damaging the skin, keep damaging, keep damaging, keep damaging, keep damaging. You're losing the opportunity to live the healing. Isn't that so? Have you noticed that when it starts to heal, it gets a little itchy? Isn't that so? Healing causes an itching sensation, right? It's the same inside us. You can observe there are many effective situations that sometimes we are starting to recover from them. Then you have that feeling every now and then of wanting to pick at the scabs of healing. Hold that there. Manage to keep your hatreds under control. Manage to keep your resentments under control. Manage to keep your needs under control. And then you start to experience the liberation process from the negative consequences that that fact has caused you. That's life. Everyone gets hurt. I can't create a dome for myself. You can't create one for you. So every now and then, people will hurt us with words. People will hurt us with actions. Now, you can't allow the word that hurts and the action that hurts to cause wounds in your being and to last longer than they should. It reached your being. It went deep into your life. It went deep into your heart. Start finding a way to heal that. Because once you have a wound in your being, you run the risk of infecting everything. In affections, that's how it works, right? Sometimes something comes, hurts our heart, we lose the disposition for everything. Lose the disposition for studies, lose the disposition for work. Why? This has an impact. It affects us. Now, the time it will take for what affects you needs to be managed by you. After all, it's your being at stake, right? And suddenly you start doing everything wrong because your being is hurt. So there's always a little wound there in your being that needs to be cared for. My people, this is an exercise for every day. You see, living the experience of being with Jesus is managing within us all these healings that we need to experience so that we become like Jesus. I want to be like him, but to be like him, I need to heal many things that are wrong in my being. I need every now and then to visit my past, to understand the present. Why am I sometimes arrogant? Was there time in my life when I was humiliated too much. And because I was humiliated too much, I have difficulty managing the moments when someone contests me. No one is by chance. Healing of being happens. When we pray, when I ask God to come and heal my heart, to come and heal my mind, these are expressions we use all the time. But God often heals our heart, heals our mind through our reflection. When you start to put your disordered feelings in order, when you start to regain the harmony that life and events sometimes take away. And that's what I wish for you, that in today's day of your life, of your story, you are committed to healing the wounds of your being. If they hurt you, don't take that with you. Just take it as a lesson for you not to do it to others. But don't let it turn into bitterness, sadness. To be creative, it has to exert within us the movement of overcoming. So, why am I sad? Why am I hurt, upset? I observe that moment. I live that moment as a purpose of overcoming. Because if I don't overcome, I run the risk of turning it into bitterness. And bitterness doesn't do the heart good. A bitter heart can't perceive life. A bitter heart remains focused on the same things. When we focus on the same things, when we don't broaden our view, we run the risk of making our life experience unhappy. Thank you for joining us today at Path of Faith. Your engagement means the world to us. So please take a moment to leave your comments, like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe for more enriching content.